Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the candlelit kitchens of the Mughal Empire, where sugar isn't just a treat, it's politics, poetry, power, and a little bit of poison. You're standing in a palace so vast it feels like its own small kingdom. Somewhere between marble courtyards and peacock gardens. The smell? Imagine caramelizing sugar, saffron smoke, and roasting pistachios drifting past columns carved with verses. You're not in the 21st century anymore. Torches flicker low as you trudge across the cool sandstone floor of a royal kitchen in Agra. The hour is absurd, past midnight, and the cooks haven't slept since yesterday. Bronze cauldrons hiss over slow fires. Men wrapped in cotton skirts, some with sugar-stained beards, stir enormous paddles through boiling syrup. It's humid, hot, sticky. You blink as a cook tosses a handful of petals into the vat. Rose petals, probably, or maybe marigold. You're too drowsy to argue. This is sugar at the height of its Mughal drama, a confection not just for eating, but for sculpting, showing off, seducing emperors, and confusing foreigners. Some desserts here take 3 days to make and disappear in 3 bites. Some are shaped like birds. Others are miniature elephants, rolled in crushed pearls. Everything glows under the torchlight like a dream you only half remember. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who else is falling asleep across time zones tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You creep deeper into the kitchen as the floor warms beneath your bare feet. A boy, no older than 10, passes by carrying a tray stacked with flaky sweetmeats, son papdi. Maybe, or patisa, each piece trembling under powdered sugar. He looks like he hasn't blinked in hours. There's no such thing as casual sugar in this world. It's ceremonial, ritualistic, and meticulously controlled. The Mughal emperors don't just want it sweet, they want it perfect. One grain too coarse and heads might roll. Figuratively, mostly. Nearby, 2 cooks whisper in Persian about a shipment of saffron that hasn't arrived. Without it, the zard biryani will be too pale. Sugar-colored food must also look royal. This is where the lines between kitchen and theater blur. You wander past a table stacked with molds, star shapes, moon shapes, birds, thrones. One of the molds is a human face. Creepy? A little. Delicious? Absolutely. These sweets are for the emperor's amusement, not yours. A taster? Yes, that's a real job. Samples each tray for poison. He looks mildly terrified, not because he suspects foul play, but because if his face wrinkles in displeasure, someone might read that as a culinary insult. You watch him chew very, very carefully. He gives a tiny nod. The tray proceeds into the imperial hall. The Mughal emperors, especially Akbar and Shah Jahan, were obsessed with feasting. They didn't just eat, they curated, commissioned, and choreographed meals. One record says sugar desserts were arranged to mimic a battlefield, complete with sweet dough soldiers. Another, an entire chessboard made of candy. Historians still argue whether these displays were regular or rare, whether they were mostly symbolic or just the emperor flexing his "I have 500 chefs" energy. But it's clear, this was culinary theater long before food shows became a thing. As you move toward the back of the kitchen, the noise softens. A blind cook slices almonds by feel alone. You pause to watch. The blade flashes. Nuts fall like snow. No wasted movement. He's been doing this since he was 5. Probably started with peanuts. One of the kitchen apprentices, thin, twitchy, maybe running on 6 hours of sleep in 6 days, explains how they make misri, crystalline sugar. It's like growing rocks, he says, gesturing to glass jars where sugar water sits still, waiting to crystallize. You lean in and see jagged little formations climbing up strings, like snowflakes that learned geometry. And just for fun, he adds, Sometimes we color them blue with indigo or gold with turmeric. You stare. Gold? He shrugs. The emperor's teeth are expensive. Speaking of which, you're pretty sure someone mentioned that Shah Jahan used to brush his teeth with rosewater-soaked twigs and sugar powder. Not because it worked, just because he could. You feel your eyelids getting heavy. Sugar's in the air now, real sugar. Not metaphor. It clings to your clothes, your breath, your skin. One cook waves a fan made of palm leaves to cool the candy. Another drizzles saffron syrup in concentric rings, like crop circles on a tray of jalebi. A rat scurries past. The cook chases it with a ladle. You both pretend it didn't happen. You sit for a moment near a charcoal brazier. Someone offers you a small, warm laddu. You bite. It's soft, dense, a little gritty with roasted flour and sugar, with a hint of cardamom that wraps itself around your tongue like silk. Everything about this moment is heavy with sweetness, cloying, comforting, exhausting, and strangely, utterly, normal in this world. This isn't just a kitchen. It's an engine of empire. And sugar is the oil. You step out from the steamy haze of the royal kitchen and into the flickering shadows of fields stretching beyond the palace walls. The night air is thick with the perfume of earth and green. And somewhere nearby, a bullock cart creaks under its own sigh. You follow a narrow dirt path winding through stalks taller than you, sugarcane. Before it was empire, before it was dessert, sugarcane was wild and wily. You lean into the thick cane stalks, brushing your fingertips along their waxy sides. They hum quietly with insects and history. These plants are ancient travelers, born in the lush wetlands of India and New Guinea. Their journey is slow, plant-paced, but relentless. Sugarcane made its way west centuries before any Mughal set foot in India. Persian texts mention reeds that produce honey without bees. You smile. That's how you describe sugar too, if you'd never seen it before and were high on poetry and dehydration. It's the 7th century, and Persian and Arab traders are already boiling this plant into syrup and drying it into crystals. You imagine a weathered man in a turban, tasting the golden paste, looking up in startled joy like he's just discovered a loophole in nature. You sit under a palm tree beside the field. A farmer rests nearby, wiping sweat with a cotton cloth stained from handling cane juice. You know, he says, they used to think sugar was medicine, that it balanced the humors. He chuckles, showing teeth that may or may not be entirely his. Historians still argue whether sugar was introduced into India by returning Arab traders or whether it originated independently here. What we do know is that by the time the Delhi Sultanate was swinging its scimitars around, sugar was already woven into Indian diets, boiled, powdered, and loved. You stand and wander to a small cane press at the field's edge, 2 stone rollers powered by a slow-moving ox. You hear the satisfying crunch of stalks breaking and see juice ooze out into a clay basin. It smells sharp and green, almost sour. Raw sugar always smells a little like sweat and secrets. Further up the path, a small shed serves as a boiling house. You peek inside. A man pours the juice into shallow iron pans and stirs with a paddle the size of a canoe oar. As it simmers, the juice thickens, darkens, ashes added to clarify it, a trick older than the Mughals. In a few hours, this batch will harden into gur or jaggery, dark, earthy, rich in molasses. You nibble a tiny shard. It melts like nostalgia. Under the Mughals, sugar's transformation from field to palace was swift, organized, and, occasionally, murderous. But before that, it was a cottage industry. Every village had its press. Every household its secret blend of spices to toss into sweets. Sugar was democratized before it was glamorized. You stroll through a village market as dawn breaks. Chickens grumble from their baskets. A woman sets up her stall with trays of sweets shaped like flowers. A boy arranges sticks of rock sugar in a spiral. A gray-bearded man sells dried fruits glazed with sugar syrup. It hits you. None of this is refined sugar. That's still centuries away. This is unrefined, organic, hardcore sugar. The kind that makes your teeth ache but your heart a little warmer. You hear a commotion at the other end of the market. A storyteller is drawing a crowd with a tale of sugar spirits, beings made of melted syrup who haunt those who waste sweets. You chuckle. Sugar's so valuable it has ghosts now. One merchant, noticing your interest, leans over. You know the Mughals? He whispers. They're changing everything. I heard Babur's people want to build sugar mills big enough to feed a city. And they've got recipes that shine like rubies. You raise an eyebrow. Rubies? He nods solemnly. Pomegranate syrup. It's the future. You continue down the lane as he calls after you. Tell the emperor to try my barfi. The sun is fully up now. The fields shimmer. The sugarcane looks taller, stronger, sharper. You feel like it's watching you, waiting. This plant is destined for greatness, and you're just tagging along. You spot a pile of sugarcane husks stacked neatly by a hut. Children climb them like a playground. One of them snaps off a piece of raw cane and offers it to you. You chew it, sweet, grassy, oddly refreshing, nature's energy drink. Later, you rest by a pond near the field. Frogs croak lazily. A heron tiptoes through the reeds. You think about how something so sticky and humble has stuck itself into every ritual, every religion, every romance. There's even a record of a 9th century Indian king who ordered a lake filled with sugar syrup for his daughter's wedding. That's not a party. That's a sugar tsunami. You close your eyes for a moment, lulled by the drone of insects and distant laughter. There's peace here, the kind of peace that tastes faintly like molasses. In this chapter of sugar's life, it's not yet a symbol of empire or indulgence. It's a gift of the land, kissed by monsoons and broken backs, simmered into sweetness by hands that will never see a marble throne. But change is coming. You can feel it like heat on the wind. You wake to the crunch of gravel under cavalry hooves. The earth trembles with the arrival of an empire. You brush sugarcane stalks off your shoulder just in time to glimpse a dust-clouded procession, horses draped in embroidered cloth, warriors with curved swords glinting in the sun, and at the center of it all, a man frowning into the wind. This is Babur, founder of the Mughal Empire. You shuffle closer, careful not to disturb the military swagger. He's young, tough, and perpetually unimpressed. His diaries, which you'd peek into if you could read Chagatai Turkic, reveal a man who romanticizes gardens but absolutely loathes Indian food. It's too spicy, he mutters, dismounting. Too much ghee. And where's the fruit? You can almost hear his internal Yelp review. 1 star. Would not dine again. Historians still argue whether Babur ever fully embraced the Indian culinary scene. But what's certain is that sugar began winning him over. Slowly, secretly, through dessert. He's handed a sweet he's never seen before, petha. Perhaps, made from ash gourd and sugar syrup. He bites in, expecting disappointment, then pauses, chews, blinks. A second bite follows. You catch the faintest curl of approval on his lips. You, invisible guest of history, grin like a cat who just watched an emperor admit defeat to candy. Babur didn't come from a land of elaborate sugar work. His roots in Central Asia were all about dried fruit, simple syrups, and honey. India was an overwhelming sensory buffet. But sugar, that sly little seducer, found its way into his court quickly. You follow the retinue as they settle into a new city, Agra. Perhaps, or Delhi, doesn't matter. What matters is that the kitchens begin to buzz. Babur wants tastes from home and this new land. A fusion begins. The cooks experiment. They blend Central Asian milk puddings with Indian jaggery. Someone adds rosewater. Someone else caramelizes dates. Accidents become recipes. Frowns become feasts. In one corner of the compound, you watch Babur's men boil cane juice for the first time. The technique is messy, inefficient, and probably smells like burnt ambition. Still, it's a start. Sugar is no longer just local, it's imperial. At one banquet, a guest offers Babur a gift wrapped in silk, candy shaped like miniature weapons. Sugar daggers, sugar shields, sugar cannonballs. It's both adorable and mildly threatening. Babur laughs, his first genuine laugh since conquering Hindustan. As the empire grows, so does sugar's reputation. What was once a village treat now starts appearing at court. You peek into Babur's diary again. He's now jotting down fruit orchard plans. And you suspect sweets are no longer the enemy. You stroll through a Mughal garden. Newly built, water channels crisscross between flowering trees. At the center, a marble platform holds a fruit and dessert display so excessive it borders on architectural. Mango slices arranged like lotus petals. Crystallized ginger, and in the middle, a sugar sculpture of a falcon mid-flight. That wasn't here last week. Sugar's moving fast. A few guards discuss recent royal commands. More sugarcane fields. Better mills. New recipes. They shrug. Emperors demand strange things. One mutters, "At least he's not ordering a palace shaped like a book again." You chuckle, but note it down. You never know. You wander deeper into the city. In a small kitchen behind a mosque, two women are preparing sweets for a festival. One grinds almonds, the other stirs syrup. They're gossiping about a nobleman's wedding. Apparently, the bride requested a halwa fountain. You imagine it, thick rivers of warm dessert pouring from a golden bowl. Sticky heaven. Outside, children crowd around a vendor with skewers of maraba. Candied fruit glowing like stained glass in the sun. A boy licks syrup from his fingers and announces to no one in particular, "Babur should make this mandatory." You nod in agreement. There's a moment when you realize, sugar is no longer just a food here. It's part of the Mughal imagination. But don't be fooled, it's still political. Babur uses sugar in diplomacy. Sweets accompany envoys. A platter of jaggery cubes sent to a rival court is both a peace offering and a flex. Look how much sugar I can afford to waste on you. At another banquet, you spot Babur toying with a sugared almond. Eyes narrowed, he's plotting military strategy between bites. One general jokes that victories taste better dipped in syrup. Babur doesn't laugh, but he finishes the almond. Night falls. You lie on a stone bench beneath a carved pavilion. Somewhere nearby, musicians are playing a slow, droning raga. Your breath smells faintly of sugar and smoke. You watch the stars emerge between stone latticework, thinking of a man who arrived grumbling about ghee and left behind an empire scented with sweets. You open your eyes to the echo of marching feet, not a chaotic stomp, but a measured rhythm, regal and relentless. The sun is higher now, and before you, like a scene conjured from a silk tapestry, stands the court of Akbar the Great. Here, sugar doesn't just melt in mouths. It moves armies, oils diplomacy, and glimmers in the beards of bureaucrats. You drift along the edge of a palace courtyard, where ministers in jewel-toned robes mutter over scrolls while sipping syrupy drinks. Not wine. Akbar isn't a fan of the stuff, but sharbat. A cold, sweet, herbal sugar drink. It sparkles pink in the sunlight and tastes like roses in winter mornings. Akbar, unlike his grandfather Babur, adores Indian food, and sweets, even more. He's not just a glutton, he's an administrator. And sugar is something to manage. You follow a scribe down a hallway lined with murals of mangoes and war elephants. He's holding a document that, surprisingly, doesn't concern military conquest. It's a supply sheet, sugar shipments, field allocations, refinery quotas. You lean in and catch a phrase, Jinzi Daftar. That's the imperial register, the state inventory. And guess what's now tracked like gold? Yep, sugar. Under Akbar, sugar gets official. Production is standardized, taxed, protected. Farmers are given incentives to grow it. Mills spring up faster than temples. Some are small and ox-powered. Others massive constructions near rivers. The Mughal administration begins developing water-powered mills too. And while not quite modern by any stretch, they represent a leap forward from village presses. You step inside one such mill. It smells like ambition. Workers feed cane into groaning rollers while others pour boiling juice into shallow pans. One man fans the mixture to cool it faster. His eyes sting from the steam, but his hand moves like clockwork. The sugar crystals that emerge aren't pristine white, they're golden, cloudy, imperfect, but they're precious. Even now, a small sack of sugar fetches a price that makes a nobleman blink. And speaking of noblemen, you wander into the Diwan-i-Khas, the hall of private audiences. Akbar sits atop his central platform, cross-legged, surrounded by scholars, artists, and nobles. The topic of today's debate? Whether sugar promotes a peaceful temperament. One Brahmin argues that sweets cleanse the soul. A Sufi scholar counters that they cloud the senses. Akbar listens, stroking his beard, probably wondering if he should eat fewer gulab jamuns before making state decisions. Historians still argue whether Akbar used food as subtle propaganda. Was his love for Indian sweets an honest craving or a clever way to align himself with the locals? After all, every time he ate kheer at a Diwali celebration or broke a barfi with Rajput generals, he was shaping an image of unity. At another gathering, Akbar introduces a new culinary event, Mahefal-e-Halwain, or Confectioner's Assembly. Think Great Mughal Bake-Off, minus the judgmental stares and soggy bottoms. Cooks from across the empire compete to create the most innovative sweets. Some mold sugar into temples. One man freezes candy with mountain ice carried 300 miles on mule-back. Akbar is delighted. You follow a whisper through the corridors. News of an imperial wedding. The princess demands 500 different sweet dishes. You visit the kitchens preparing for the event. It's chaos, but majestic chaos. One team sculpts a barfi garden. Another stacks lattice into a tower taller than a man. You eye the saffron budget and briefly consider a career in spice smuggling. Out in the markets, Akbar's sugar policies are making waves. You watch merchants haggle over jaggery blocks the size of bricks. Kids gnaw on sugarcane sticks. Even beggars hold sticky ravari, sesame candy with jaggery, as they sing outside mosques. You bump into a traveling poet who recites verses comparing love to sugar, dangerously sweet, quick to melt, and liable to rot your teeth if you're not careful. You nod. That's uncomfortably accurate. One evening, you catch a glimpse of Akbar during his evening walk. He's older now, slower, but he still carries a small pouch of candied fennel seeds. He pops them into his mouth between political updates. You wonder if he tastes diplomacy with every crunch. That night, fireworks light up the sky over Fatehpur Sikri. Below, trays of sweets move like rivers through the crowd. Guests laugh, dancers twirl, and somewhere in a corner, an accountant updates the sugar ledger by candlelight. You lie on a balcony ledge, watching it all. From up here, sugar looks like starlight caught in pastries. But you know better. This is empire. Logistics, policy, and yes, joy, distilled into something as small as a grain of sweetness. The night clings softly to the sandstone walls, and your breath mists in the cool air. You're back in the palace, but not in the kitchens this time. Tonight, you glide through the glittering banquet halls of the Mughal court, where sugar becomes performance art, and dessert is both an experience and a flex. You pause beside a marble column, half hidden by a curtain embroidered with gold thread. Beyond it, the banquet begins. A table stretches further than you can see, covered in cloth of silk, embroidered with silver. Lanterns flicker overhead. Musicians play something slow and sweet, a tune that feels like melted syrup. The scent of rosé, saffron, cardamom, and roasted almonds is almost enough to make you float. Then comes the centerpiece. A sugar sculpture taller than a man is wheeled into the room on a platform. A replica of the Red Fort made entirely of spun sugar and gold leaf. It shimmers. It shouldn't be possible. And yet, there it is, edible and absurdly imperial. A group of foreign ambassadors whisper in awe. One tries to poke it. A eunuch slaps his hand away. Dessert diplomacy is serious business. You inch closer to the banquet table, trying not to drool on any priceless textiles. Before you lies an edible universe, miniature palaces, candied swans, towers of halwa, crystal dishes of ferny that quiver like clouds. Some sweets are shaped like fruits. Some fruits are filled with sweets. Everything is a riddle wrapped in sugar and served with a smirk. There's a bowl of pomegranate seeds, each one coated in sugar, glistening like rubies. A servant sprinkles crushed rose petals on top. You steal one. Your mouth explodes in tart and floral sugar, a brief, edible poem. And then, the chilled dishes arrive. You blink. Ice? In Mughal India? Yes. The emperors were obsessed with cold desserts, sherbets, frozen creams, and chilled puddings, even when the summer heat felt like walking inside a brick oven. And how did they manage it? Simple. They harvested ice from the Himalayas and had it transported hundreds of miles by caravans. You heard right. Literal mountains of snow carried on the backs of elephants and mules to keep the elite delightfully frosty. Historians still argue whether the Mughals used insulated underground chambers or clever evaporative cooling with clay pots. But either way, it worked, and nothing says, "I control the subcontinent," like chilled rose sherbet in June. At the far end of the table, Emperor Jahangir raises a spoon delicately carved from ivory and dips it into what looks like snow. It's flavored with orange blossom, studded with tiny candied pistachios, and disappears on the tongue like a sigh. The guests clap politely. You see one British envoy nearly weep with joy. He came expecting curry and camel rides. And now he's eating ice cream under moonlight in a palace with sugar chandeliers. You get it. You slip away from the noise. Your hands still sticky from sneaking a slice of saffron-soaked Shahi Tukda. In the next chamber, palace artisans are preparing for tomorrow's display. Sugar animals. Yes, you heard that right. Miniature menageries of elephants, tigers, peacocks, deer, all sculpted from sugar paste, then painted with edible dyes and sometimes even perfumed. They don't move, but they might as well. You stare at a sugar monkey perched atop a candy banyan tree and feel uneasy. It's too lifelike, or maybe you're just crashing from the sugar high. A courtier nearby explains, "These sculptures are gifts. The emperor sends them to nobles. They display them proudly. Then, he shrugs. They eat them, or bribe someone with them, or forget and let ants do the job. Even gifts rot in time." One tray carries sugar pearls, smaller than peas, intended to be strung into necklaces. Decorative? Yes. Edible? Also yes. One nobleman's daughter supposedly wore an entire sugar tiara to her wedding. It rained that day. It did not end well. You wander into the garden now, where the banquets sometimes spill into marble pavilions under the stars. A gentle breeze carries the scent of jasmine and hot syrup. Somewhere nearby, an enormous bronze cauldron, called a deg, boils over an open flame. It's filled with kheer, rice pudding thick enough to hold a spoon upright. A young boy stands beside it, sprinkling in crushed almonds. My grandfather says Emperor Akbar once had kheer dyed 7 colors for a rainbow feast. He says proudly, 1 bowl for each day of the week. Did it taste good? You ask. He shrugs. Probably not, but it looked amazing. That sums it up, doesn't it? In the Mughal court, sugar wasn't just about taste. It was display, pageantry, theater. You eat with your eyes, your nose, and, if you're really rich, your sense of national dominance. And oh, the symbolism. Sugar was purity. Sugar was wealth. Sugar was control. But also, quietly, sugar was magic. You overhear a royal astrologer murmuring about the auspiciousness of eating white sugar on Thursdays. Another claims that dream interpretation becomes clearer after a spoon of misri. You're pretty sure none of this is backed by science. Doesn't matter. Belief is the strongest spice here. As the night deepens, the banquet fades, plates are cleared, torches dimmed, musicians play a lullaby now, and the emperor retires. You lie down near a marble step and gaze at the stars through carved screens. Somewhere, a sugar peacock begins to melt. You think, this wasn't a meal. This was a ceremony, and it was delicious. You awaken to the whisper of silk and the scent of rosewater drifting on the morning breeze. The palace is quieter now. No banquet noise, no royal proclamations echoing through marble halls. Just muffled laughter, the clink of bangles, and the rustle of anklets behind curtains. You're entering the zenana, the imperial women's quarters. Strictly off limits to most, and even more off limits to history. But tonight, you get to slip through the embroidered veil. Inside, it's a world of its own. Cool stone floors, soft cushions, walls painted with vines and parrots. The air is thick with incense and secrets. Servants move like shadows, carrying trays of dried fruit and brass cups of sweet milk. This is not the emperor's kitchen. This is the private realm of Mughal princesses, queens, poets, and power brokers in silk. And here, sugar takes on a whole new form. You trail behind a young woman named Gulrik. She's no more than 16, but sharp as a needle and twice as fast. Her job? Royal recipe apprentice. Her mission? To master the sacred art of sweet making under the watchful eye of the court's most legendary matron. Bibi Sura. Bibi Sura could kill a man with her lattice, figuratively. Probably. She's been in charge of the imperial sweets for over 40 years and once invented a pistachio-stuffed, rose-petal-scented dessert that made an ambassador cry with joy. Allegedly, you perch on a cushion beside Gulrik as Bibi Sura claps her hands. A servant brings in trays of ingredients, jaggery blocks, rose petals, saffron threads, almonds, dried dates, poppy seeds, candied fennel, sugar in every shape and form. Not just white crystals, but raw, dark, golden, rock-like, powdered, sticky, fragrant. Today's lesson. The making of Shahi Panjiri, a royal crumble of roasted wheat. Sugar, nuts, and ghee, used for strength, energy, and apparently to win arguments with in-laws. Gulrik grinds cardamom with a stone pestle while Bibi Sura explains how the proportions change with the seasons. In winter, more ghee. In summer, more fennel. And always, she says, tapping the bowl, a pinch of sugar before salt. The tongue must smile before it learns restraint. You suppress a grin. The metaphors are thick in this room. Almost as thick as the syrup being drizzled into a pan across the way. In another corner of the zenana, older women are sculpting sweets into floral arrangements. These aren't just snacks, they're gifts, tokens, weapons in the art of courtship. One girl giggles as she paints a sugar lotus with edible silver foil. This one's going to the prince's cousin. He needs a nudge. A servant whispers a warning. Don't eat the silver. It gives some people dreams. You blink. What kind of dreams? She doesn't answer. Of course, historians still debate the role of women in Mughal culinary invention. Official records rarely credit them. Yet oral histories and palace rumors suggest that many of the empire's most exquisite sweet recipes were born in rooms like this one. The zenana was not a prison. It was a pressure cooker of culture, creativity, and cunning. You pass a low table where a princess is embroidering a handkerchief with sugar paste. She's tracing verses from a love poem. The cloth won't last the day. It's meant to be eaten. Love letters, but digestible. Nearby, two girls practice the art of nakashi, sugar painting. They've painted a scene of a peacock on a lake, using only crushed saffron, indigo, and sugar glaze. It's stunning. And also, probably ant bait by sunset. A woman in a deep blue sari sits cross-legged with a book of herbal remedies. She's the court hakima, or female physician, and she's preparing a tonic made of sugar syrup, dried figs, black pepper, and powdered pearls. It's for the empress's sleep. You raise an eyebrow. That sounds more like dessert than medicine. Same thing. The hakima murmurs. If you eat it slowly enough. Later, you find yourself watching an older queen roast almonds over a small fire. She stirs slowly, rhythmically, muttering to herself. She's preparing badam halwa, not for a feast, but for mourning. A relative has died, and the sweetness is a reminder of the soul's softness, the transient joys of life. In the zenana, Even grief tastes like sugar. Outside, the faint call to prayer rises in the air. The women pause. Some pray, others clean. A few sneak pieces of kaju katli when they think no one's looking. You are, but you're not judging. You walk toward an arched window overlooking the palace gardens. Below, men scurry about in preparation for some unknown event. Above, the women quietly influence it. Tray by tray, flavor by flavor. You sip from a small cup of kesari doodh, saffron milk laced with honey and a whisper of nutmeg. It warms your chest like a secret confession. In the zanana, sugar is coded language, currency, and bomb. It moves in hidden hands, through locked doors, onto the tongues of emperors who never know where the recipe came from. But you do now. A breeze drifts through, stirring the curtains. The room glows amber in the late afternoon light. Someone begins humming an old folk song about a bride who cried into her sugar dough. And the halwa turned out perfectly. You settle onto a pillow, eyes heavy. Somewhere behind you, Bibi Sura is grumbling again. But softer now. Too much rosewater, she mutters. You'll drown the almonds. You smile as your eyelids flutter closed. And just like that, sugar turns to silence. You wake to chaos. Not war, not a royal coup, but something far stickier. You're in the bazaar now. The commercial heartbeat of a Mughal city. And it is very much alive. The scent hits first. Warm jaggery melting on iron griddles. Cardamom thick in the air. Sugar syrup bubbling like gossip. You dodge a cow, 2 goats, and a particularly determined pigeon as you're pulled into the swirl of traders, hawkers, and small, sticky-fingered children. Here, sugar isn't noble or ceremonial. It's practical, primal, and profitable, and it's everywhere. You pass a stall piled high with blocks of jaggery the color of damp sand. They're hacked into rough chunks with curved blades, weighed on rusted iron scales, and sold with the speed of an auction. One buyer licks a piece to test its purity. Another tries to bribe the vendor with a date-stuffed pastry. The vendor accepts. Coins clink across the table. Copper dirhams smeared with molasses. You overhear someone joke that half the currency in Agra is sticky. Honestly, it tracks. Just across from the jaggery man, a woman in a deep red sari fries thin, crisp jalebis in bubbling oil. She scoops them out in golden spirals and dunks them into sugar syrup so thick it moves like honey caught in a nap. You take one. It burns your fingers. You wait precisely 2 seconds before eating it anyway. Oh, sweet, merciful, spiral of the gods. Crunchy, syrupy, impossible to chew without closing your eyes in reverence. A passing fakir nods solemnly as he watches you struggle through the spiritual awakening that is jalebi. He approves. As you wander deeper, you spot carts of amarti, balashahi, rivari, and patisa stacked like edible fortresses. Some vendors chant the names of their sweets like prayer. Others just hold up samples and let the scent do the work. At a corner stall, a boy no older than 8 offers sugarcane juice in clay cups. He smashes the cane through a hand-cranked press, watching the green juice pour out like treasure. 2 paise, he says. You pay. He hands you the cup, then wipes his hand on his kurta. You sip. It's grassy, cold, alive. You nod at the boy. He doesn't nod back. Business is business. A group of women bargain over the price of rock sugar, misri, sold by a man who claims it was blessed by a Sufi saint. Cures heartbreak, he says, and indigestion. Same difference. You turn a corner and nearly crash into a man carrying trays of koya barfi, each piece topped with a sliver of silver foil. He's sweating. You're sweating. Everyone is sweating. But the sweets? The sweets are glistening like royal jewels. You notice something strange now. Sugar isn't just being sold. It's being traded, used as payment, as part of dowries, even in legal settlements. One man offers 40 kilos of jaggery to settle a dispute over a stolen goat. The judge agrees. You can't tell who got the better deal. Historians still argue whether sugar was ever used as a standardized currency. But in these bazaars, it's clear, Sweet is power. And power is portable. If it doesn't melt, you step into a shaded alcove where an elderly man is telling fortunes with cards dipped in syrup. His cards stick together as he fans them out. "Oh," he says, peering at yours, "you will marry a halwa seller." You blink. Honestly, you could do worse. Back outside, a street performer balances on a pole while reciting verses from the Ramayana, all while tossing sugar cubes into the crowd. A monkey claps beside him, wearing a vest and holding a tray of candied nuts. You question your reality for a moment, then take a candied nut. As the afternoon sun sharpens, vendors begin packing up. Children scoop spilled sugar from the cobblestones. A cow licks a jaggery bag someone dropped. You find a shady spot and sit with a local merchant sipping Bottom Dude, a warm, milky drink laced with almonds and, of course, sugar. He tells you that every sweet here has a story. That halwa recipe, he says, pointing across the street, was brought by a Persian who fell in love with a courtesan. That one? He nods at a flaky pile of sown papdi, invented by mistake. Too much ghee, not enough sleep. You chuckle. The best stories are always cooking accidents. A beggar child appears and is handed a piece of burfi by a passing woman. No words are exchanged, no coins, just sugar, passed from one hand to another. Quiet charity wrapped in sweetness. You realize how deeply sugar is rooted in everything here: rituals, economies, even ethics. As twilight descends, oil lamps flicker to life. The bazaar glows gold. You wander through the last of the stalls, picking up a tiny cone of gulkand, rose petal preserve soaked in syrup. It melts on your tongue like perfume. You find a quiet wall to lean against, the hum of the marketplace fading into lullaby. Around you, shopkeepers sweep up spilled sugar like it's stardust. And maybe it is. Night falls softer here, as if even the sky is soothed by sugar. Lanterns sway outside shrines, casting golden halos onto whitewashed walls. You follow the scent of sandalwood and warm syrup to a quiet courtyard, humming with voices, not of merchants or ministers, but pilgrims. Welcome to the Dargah, the resting place of a Sufi saint. Tonight, the air is thick with devotion, song, and, you guessed it, sweets. You step barefoot past the threshold. The marble is cool. Incense curls in spirals above your head. On the steps, beggars murmur prayers. Inside, under layers of embroidered cloth, lies the tomb of a man once revered as a healer, a poet, a bridge between worlds. And at his feet, mounds of sugar, wrapped in cloth bundles, shaped into pyramids, scattered like offerings, misri, gur, sugar candies, crystallized fennel. You blink. Is this a shrine or a sweet shop? A caretaker explains in a hushed tone. Sugar is the language of the soul. Offer it with your prayer. Leave it with your sorrow. Take it with your hope. You glance at a woman holding a newborn. She places a cube of misri on the tomb, whispers a wish, then tucks it away again. That cube will dissolve in milk later. Part of a quiet ritual for long life. You're not sure if it's medicine, magic, or both. Probably both. Historians still debate the roots of this tradition. Was it symbolic of sweetness in the afterlife? A reflection of Sufi hospitality? A quiet rebellion against courtly extravagance? There's no single answer, but the sugar speaks clearly. This is no transaction. It's transformation. You sit beneath a flowering champa tree in the courtyard and listen to the qawwals, Sufi singers, begin their performance. The harmonium wheezes to life. The tabla joins in. The lead singer's voice rises, warm and worn, like syrup poured over a burn. His song isn't just about God. It's about longing, about sweetness and surrender. Someone passes you a bowl of zarda, saffron rice with sugar, nuts, and raisins. It's simple, tender, a little sticky, comfort food for the soul. You eat slowly, reverently. Next to you, a man shares a tale of a wandering Sufi who could sweeten water just by stirring it with his walking stick. Another claims a saint once fed a village for 3 days on a single lump of sugar that never shrank. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. You don't question sweetness. A mother ties a red thread to the lattice of the tomb, then breaks a sugar candy into 3 pieces, one for her, one for the saint, one for the wish. You wonder how many wishes the saint has eaten over the centuries. You hope he still has room for more. Nearby, a stall sells chana dal halwa in tiny clay bowls. Each one is topped with a single clove, pressed in like a punctuation mark. You take one and sit by the shrine wall, where stories swirl like steam. You hear about a Mughal prince who visited the shrine in disguise, hoping for healing. He offered a mound of sugar so large it fed the poor for a week. You're told his wounds healed overnight. Coincidence? Probably. But the syrupy mystery is nicer to believe. Down the corridor, you see an old woman with a metal tray, 3 small candles, some dried rose petals, and 6 jaggery cubes. She sings as she lights the candles. It's not in any formal language, just syllables, half words, maybe names of people she's lost. When the flames flicker out, she eats one of the jaggery cubes and gives the rest to strangers. You, the man beside you, a stray child, none of you speak, just chew. You move to a shaded colonnade as more pilgrims arrive. A groom and bride step barefoot into the courtyard, henna still fresh on their fingers. They offer sugar pearls wrapped in velvet. It's said to bless marriages with sweetness, patience, and no fewer than 7 arguments a week. The Sufis have a sense of humor. Behind the shrine, in a quieter area, a group of scholars sip sugarcane tea and argue, politely, about theology. One says sugar is the metaphor for divine love, intoxicating, nourishing, dangerous in excess. Another suggests it represents hidden knowledge, sweet, but only once dissolved. You suspect they've each had 3 cups too many. Children dart between the grown-ups, chasing each other with strips of candied orange peel. A small girl stops to hand you one. You thank her. She nods gravely. Eat it slowly. She whispers, "It's from the happy pile." You're not sure what that means. You obey anyway. Later, the crowd begins to thin. The candles burn low. A gentle rain starts, soft as powdered sugar falling from the sky. You sit by the tomb's edge, watching water bead on the stone and vanish. The misri offerings glisten in the lamplight. And for a moment, the whole shrine smells like sugar and smoke. As you close your eyes, someone begins reciting a line of Persian poetry. Whoever tastes the sweetness of love never needs another feast. You drift into sleep with that sweetness on your tongue. By the time you wake, the rain has dried into the scent of sun-warmed bricks and damp cane fields. You're no longer in the soft glow of Sufi shrines or palace kitchens. You're at the edge of a village where sugar grows tall, and something darker simmers beneath the sweetness. The oxen groan, the carts creak, the sugarcane harvest is in full swing, and the laborers are tired. You sit on a low wall beside a boy no older than 12. His hands are covered in sticky juice. His eyes are far older than his face. "We work until the moon," he says, and sometimes past it. You hand him a piece of gur. He eats it quietly, chewing like it's both meal and memory. Sugar might glitter in the court, but out here it stains clothes, breaks backs, and bleeds fingers raw. A small refinery stands nearby, puffing smoke into the sky. Inside, men shovel crushed cane into furnaces, stirring thick vats of juice with poles taller than themselves. The heat is unbearable. The floor is blackened with years of spillage, ashes, and something else you'd rather not think about. One man sings to himself, a slow, rhythmic tune, syncing perfectly with the paddle in his hands. You try not to imagine how many songs he's sung just to get through the work. Historians still argue whether Mughal sugarcane production was outright slavery or simply a brutal form of bonded labor. The records are ambiguous, the language sanitized, contracts rare, wages uneven, choices few. You see entire families, fathers, daughters, grandmothers, all involved in the boiling, the pressing, the packaging. It's not forced. Someone says, But where else will they go? You nod, slowly. Sometimes, captivity isn't chains, it's economics. A woman nearby holds her baby in one arm while stoking the fire with the other. Her face glows red in the flames. She stirs the juice with a precision that looks almost ceremonial. My grandmother did this, she says, and her grandmother before her. You ask if she likes sweets. She laughs, only if someone else makes them. You wander to the edge of the field, where freshly cut cane lies in rows. A man offers you a stalk and a short knife. You try peeling it, but the blade slips. He chuckles and takes over. City fingers, he says. You don't argue. Nearby, two men discuss selling this batch to a middleman from the city. The rate is lower than last year. Everything is, but they shrug. At least we're not in indigo. One says, you gather that's another crop with even worse stories. A rumor passes through the field. A new tax is coming. Or maybe an inspection. No one knows. The empire is large, and news travels slower than sugar shipments. You sit beneath a neem tree as the sun reaches its peak. Someone hands you a drink of nimbu sherbet, lime and sugar water. It's bracing, almost too sweet, but it cuts through the dust in your throat like a monsoon after drought. As you rest, you remember stories from the court, banquets, sherbet fountains, jeweled halwa. The contrast is dizzying. Here, sugar is not art, it is effort, it is currency, it is survival. A child runs past, barefoot, laughing, carrying a dripping stalk like a sword. You watch him swing it at another child, who dodges, then swings back with a jaggery ladle. A duel. You realize, the world's stickiest duel. Their mothers shout at them and laugh at the same time. Even in sweat and scarcity, sweetness finds a way. You follow a cart headed toward the next village. It's loaded with jaggery blocks and covered in a tarp. One wheel wobbles, but the driver doesn't slow. If I make it before sunset, he mutters, I can sleep under a roof. On the road, a group of boys sing a sugarcane work song, half chant, half complaint. One line translates loosely to, if the emperor tasted this labor, he'd never ask for another laddu. You hum along. You arrive at a smaller refinery where ash is used to purify juice, an odd trick that leaves it cleaner. Clearer. One worker explains that crushed animal bones work too. But don't tell the vegetarians. He winks. You try not to think about the kheer you had 2 nights ago. Some techniques here are centuries old. Others are innovations borrowed from travelers, tinkerers, or desperate genius. The workers don't call it chemistry, but it is. You spot a list tacked to a door. Family debts. Some numbers have been crossed out. Others grow longer each month. You wonder how many of these families are here by choice, and how many are here because their sugar-fed emperors never tasted poverty. As evening settles in, the fires dim, the stirring stops, and the workers sit in a circle to eat. Their food is simple: lentils, flatbread, a spoon of jaggery at the end. One man dips the jaggery in salt. You raise an eyebrow. Too much sweet. He shrugs. You forget life's sharp edges. You chew on that thought for a while. The moon rises over the cane fields, silver on green. In the quiet, you hear everything. The creak of muscles, the sizzle of cooling iron, the faint murmur of a baby rocked to sleep with syrup on her tongue. You lie back in the cart, let your eyes close, and try to count the stars, but they blur with the sugar dust in the air. And before long, you're asleep, cradled by the labor that built empires and never got to taste them. You wake up sneezing, not from dust or pollen, but from powdered sugar. It floats through the air in little clouds, coating your lashes, settling into your clothes, slipping up your nose like a prank. You're in another Mughal kitchen, but not the ones of courtly grace and rose petal fountains. This one's weird. You squint at the table. A cook, half alchemist, half mad scientist, is pouring a mixture of sugar and ash into a large brass bowl. You check again. Yep, ash, from a fire that just went out. What in the sticky science are we doing? You ask aloud. The cook doesn't even look up. Purification, he replies, sifting the ash carefully, removes impurities, clarifies the syrup. He lifts a spoon and lets the liquid fall. It gleams like amber. Somehow, disturbingly, it works. You've entered the world of unusual sugar additives, a place where nothing is quite what it seems, and everything is edible, allegedly. Nearby, a helper grinds dried animal bones into fine powder. He adds it to another batch of syrup. Don't ask, he mutters. You weren't going to. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was, using charred bones or animal products to clarify sugar. Some argue it was regional. Others claim it was entirely optional. But the results speak for themselves: clearer, smoother syrup with a cleaner taste. The ethics, however, a bit murkier. You move cautiously to the next station, where another cook is shaving gold leaf with the delicacy of a jeweler. Thin, shimmering sheets so fragile they flutter when someone breathes too hard. These will be pressed onto sweets like barfi or pitas, giving them a glint of opulence. Edible? You ask. Mostly, he replies. Some say it cools the body. Others say it just looks expensive. He winks. You're not reassured. There's a tray of sweets on the side, little nuggets of condensed milk, cardamom, and sugar, each topped with a flake of silver. You pop one into your mouth. Tastes divine. You feel like royalty, and maybe a magpie. But it gets weirder. In another part of the kitchen, someone is mixing saffron and crushed pearls into syrup. This one's for the wedding feast. The head chef explains. To promote fertility, clarity of mind, and status. Not necessarily in that order. You're beginning to suspect the Mughal sweetmakers had access to the same logic as medieval apothecaries. If it sparkles, grind it. If it burns, clarify it. If it's edible-ish, well, why not? And it's not just about ingredients, it's about technique. One cook is using a device that looks suspiciously like a fan on a stick to cool sugar rapidly into glass like shards. Another is spinning threads of sugar so thin they look like spiderwebs. Bird's nest candy, he says, brittle, but melts like breath. You see sweets dyed with beetroot for red, saffron for yellow, spinach for green. Natural, they say. You believe them, sort of. Then a cook lifts a bowl of vivid blue sugar paste and says, "This one's from indigo and crushed stone." Okay then. One assistant brings you something called sugar snow, pulverized crystal sifted repeatedly until light as dust. It's used to coat gulab jamun, he explains, so it sparkles under candlelight. It's not for taste, it's for love, he adds, completely serious. A whisper passes through the kitchen. New experimentation from the imperial physician. You trail the gossip into a shadowed back room, where a very confident man in a white robe is stirring sugar syrup with a glass rod. Infused with crushed pearl, he tells you, for digestion and complexion. You can't help but ask, "What else have you tried?" He grins. Camel urine. You blink. Diluted. For balance, he adds, like that clears anything up. You take a polite step back. The truth is, sugar became a platform for experimentation. Mughal chefs weren't just cooks, they were inventors, chemists, and artists. The sweet was never just sweet. It was designed to shine, to heal, to impress, to whisper a secret message with every bite. One favorite trick? Hiding messages inside sugar sculptures. You watch as a young apprentice rolls a scroll of saffron paper, slips it into a hollow candy rose, and seals it with syrup. "This one's for the princess," he says. "She'll know what it means." You hope so. Otherwise, someone's about to eat a lot of unrequited poetry. Outside, trays are being dusted, wrapped, and boxed. Some will go to the palace, others to noble houses. A few will be sent as diplomatic gifts, delicate, mysterious, and probably mildly hallucinogenic. You can't prove that last part. But still, you nibble a piece of sugar glass, clear, sharp-edged, shimmering. It cracks under your teeth and melts instantly. A cook laughs behind you. Made from nothing but sugar, ash, And patience. You believe it. And patience, clearly, is the rarest ingredient. The night deepens. The kitchens grow quiet. You walk past tables full of molded sweets, birds, leaves, flowers, thrones. Everything glimmers under a soft coat of powdered sugar, like frost in a land where it never snows. You sit on a step with a silver-coated cashew sweet in your palm. The moon reflects faintly on its surface. You take a bite. Crunch. Soft. Gone. Magic. You're curled up on a mat now, somewhere between the palace kitchen and a scholar's clinic. The air smells less like cardamom tonight and more like cloves, burnt herbs, and faintly singed hair. Not quite the soothing sugar dream you were having. You've landed in the Mughal medical wing, where sugar wears a lab coat, or, more accurately, a fine muslin robe with suspicious stains. A physician with a beard like a broomstick waves you in. You look pale. He says, "Sit, try this." He hands you a cup of warm syrup laced with ginger and pepper. You take a sip. It's shockingly spicy, oddly comforting. Your tongue both weeps and sings. "This," he says proudly, "cures everything from fatigue to heartbreak. Especially heartbreak." You're not sure about the science, but you nod supportively. In Mughal medicine, Unani system to be precise, sugar wasn't just a flavor. It was a vehicle. It delivered herbs, cooled heat in the blood, and soothed fiery temperaments. Want to balance your pitta or bile? Sugar. Got a cough? Sugar. Sad? Sugar. Dead? Well, at least you'll be sweet-smelling. The physician opens a cabinet and begins pulling out jars. Misri steeped in rosewater. Candied fennel. Sugar pills pressed with camphor. Sugar pastes infused with opium, for restless minds. He winks. Then he reveals a tray of sugar cubes dipped in camel urine. You recoil instinctively. Relax. He chuckles. It's dried, medicinal, old practice from the desert tribes. Extremely effective for certain imbalances. He waves vaguely. You're too stunned to ask what imbalances camel pee fixes. Probably all of them, if you're brave enough. Historians still argue how seriously this combination was taken. Some say it was folk medicine repackaged in royal robes. Others believe it was more symbolic, a purification ritual, a nod to nomadic wisdom. Whatever the case, someone, somewhere, probably got better, or at least thought they did. You step into a side room where a younger student is grinding sugar into powder and mixing it with crushed pearls and dried basil. To cool the liver, he says, as if that explains everything. He offers you a pinch. You taste it. It's not terrible. Nearby, two midwives prepare a sugar tonic with saffron, cardamom, and crushed coriander. For new mothers, one says, gives strength and sweetness to the milk. You glance at the tiny vial she corks and places in a velvet pouch. It looks more like a perfume bottle than medicine. You walk over to a table where pastes are being rolled into pills by hand. One assistant is making electuaries, thick herbal jams with a base of honey and sugar, used for everything from digestion to memory enhancement. This one, he says, holding up a sticky, dark lump, is for focus, made with sugar, pepper, clove, and goat bile. You politely pretend to be fascinated while making a mental note never to eat anything unlabeled. In the corner, a feverish nobleman lies under a sheet. The physician drips sugar water onto his lips. Delirium, he whispers, but the sweetness keeps him tethered. You pause. That's poetic. Also, kind of terrifying. A scribe nearby copies out prescriptions with the same reverence usually reserved for poetry. He reads aloud. To ease melancholy, crushed almond, rosewater, rock sugar, and half a stanza of Hafiz. You raise an eyebrow. A stanza? He grins. Poetry is medicine too. As the night deepens, the line between dessert and drug begins to blur completely. One room holds jars of preserved fruits, apricots, plums, even green mango, stored in sugar syrup and considered both digestive aids and palate cleansers. Another room contains pickled rose petals and candied roots labeled with ailments, melancholy, Heat stroke, sore throat, heartbreak, envy. A scholar leans in and says, "We once cured an emperor's insomnia with sugar pearls soaked in sandalwood and rainwater. He dreamt of gardens for 7 nights straight." You try not to envy that level of luxury-induced REM sleep. And just when you think you've seen it all, a cook-doctor hybrid wheels in a cart bearing medicated halwa, rich, dark, warm, infused with musk and powdered herbs. It's supposed to ease joint pain. You take a bite, your knees don't feel better, but your soul floats a little. You walk past a shelf labeled, "for emergencies," where sugar pills are stored beside dried pomegranate skins and powdered emerald. You don't ask. Someone begins lighting small oil lamps around the room. You hear the scribes humming softly. Not prayers, just rhythms, something between lullaby and recipe. The physician returns, holding a small box wrapped in linen. "A gift," he says. "Inside are 3 sugar candies, one for clarity, one for courage, and one just because he likes you." You leave the clinic, dazed but weirdly satisfied. Your pockets now contain several unlabeled sugar balls, 2 flower-scented pills, and what you're pretty sure is dried camel medicine. You'll figure it out later. Outside, the air is cooler, the stars brighter, and in your mouth, the lingering sweetness of medicine disguised as indulgence. You whisper to no one in particular, "May all cures taste this good." Your next waking moment is met with the sharp sound of metal tapping enamel. Tap tap tap, followed by a grunt of disapproval. You sit up, blinking, and realize you're in a room that smells like clove oil, rosewater, and decay. This is the Imperial Dental Chamber. It's not a palace tour they give to visitors. Before you, half reclined on a gold-trimmed cushion, lies a royal patient with his mouth wide open and a distinctly unenthusiastic look in his eyes. That patient? None other than Emperor Shah Jahan, famed builder of the Taj Mahal, sugar lover extraordinaire, and right now, tragically full of cavities. A royal dentist in spotless white robes pokes gently at one of the emperor's molars with a thin silver hook. "Too many Sohan halwa," he mutters, then adds under his breath, "and not enough rinsing." You wince on Shah Jahan's behalf. The emperor gestures impatiently, pointing at a silver tray. A servant hands him a delicate muquas mix, fennel, anise, rock sugar, something to chew after meals. He chomps. You hear it crunch between his aching teeth. Historians still argue how extensive dental care was in Mughal India. Some say the emperors had access to herbal treatments and surprisingly advanced tools. Others claim it was mostly guesswork and prayers, judging by the growing pile of clove buds on the side table. You're leaning toward guesswork with a side of florals. A eunuch enters carrying a clay pot of warm water mixed with camphor and cardamom. Shah Jahan swishes it, winces, spits. "The left one." He groans. "The molar." The dentist sighs. "That one's not a molar anymore, Majesty. That's a memory." You glance at the tooth in question. It's the color of old ivory and vaguely resembles a collapsed tent. You can't blame him, though. This is a man who turned sugar into spectacle. His court was known for sugar sculptures, chilled desserts, and lavishly spiced sweets that could knock out a rhino. One account claims he once hosted a banquet where mitai shaped like weapons was handed out to generals, each piece filled with almond paste and, perhaps a touch too much syrup. You wander into the Hall of Records and find an old court log listing daily sweet consumption. Shah Jahan, it seems, requested sugar-laced milk sherbet every morning, candied melon by noon, rose-flavored kulfi by evening, and a final piece of barfi before bed. You suddenly understand the tooth situation. You pass a window and glimpse a group of servants hauling buckets of rosewater to clean the emperor's marble chambers. One laughs. "We spend more on sugar than we do on marble polish." The others nod solemnly. Inside the court kitchens, the cooks whisper that they've started reducing sugar in certain dishes without telling anyone. If His Majesty finds out, one mutters, "We'll be feeding the crocodiles." He's joking. Probably. You peek into the harem, where royal wives and concubines are quietly gossiping over saffron-soaked sweets. One whispers that Shah Jahan's latest toothache lasted 3 days and ended in a poetry binge. He recited ghazals to his molars. She giggles, called one of them his faithful ivory soldier. They burst into laughter. You pretend not to hear. A young prince enters, cheeks bulging. Did you take the candied mango again? Someone asks. He nods, grinning wide, revealing one black tooth and a very proud spirit. History repeats. Later, you meet the palace attars, perfume makers, who've been summoned to mask the increasingly pungent smell of the emperor's mouth. We've tried clove, betel, mint, even powdered jade. One confesses, nothing helps. He eats too many sweets and refuses to floss. Floss? You ask. He blinks. Thread. We use silk thread. Occasionally. The Mughal understanding of oral hygiene wasn't entirely lacking. Miswak sticks, chewing twigs from the Salvadora tree, were used widely. Even by emperors. You watch as a servant hands one to Shah Jahan, who chews it absent-mindedly while dictating a letter. His eyes are red, maybe from pain, maybe from remembering Mumtaz. Grief has a sweet tooth. 2. You recall that Shah Jahan commissioned sugar monuments for special anniversaries, sculptures of birds, flowers, even full dining sets made of hardened syrup and edible paint. They melted before sunrise, like dreams. Now, seated once more before the imperial dentist, the emperor frowns deeply. Pull it, he says. The dentist freezes. Majesty, with respect. Pull it. You don't stay for the extraction. The sound alone will haunt your sleep for weeks. Instead, you retreat to the quieter quarters where the emperor's daughters are supervising sweet rations for a religious festival. One of them, Princess Jahanara, comments dryly, "Father believes sweets will soften sorrow. But sorrow is harder than enamel." You sit with her as she folds small pieces of calicland into silk wrappers. Each one will be handed out to pilgrims tomorrow. She places one on your palm. Eat it slowly, she says, or you'll end up in that chair, reciting couplets to your gums. Outside, the moonlight glows on marble and mouths alike. You sit under an archway and feel the sugary coating on your own teeth. A little too much, but the warmth in your chest says it was worth it. And if your molars ever rebel, well, you'll be in excellent company. The scent of cinnamon and damp parchment guides you into the next chamber, stone walls, oil lamps, and the quiet shuffle of foreign sandals. You're no longer among the emperors or the sweet-tongued cooks. You're among strangers now, Jesuit missionaries, powdered wigs and all, with eyes wide as saucers and manners wrapped in lace. They've come to the Mughal court to convert souls and collect stories. But mostly, they can't stop talking about the sugar. You spot one of them, Father Antonio, red-faced, scribbling furiously into a leather-bound journal while attempting, and failing, to eat a delicate malpua without it collapsing into syrupy surrender. This, he mutters, licking his fingers, is both a culinary revelation and an affront to restraint. His French companion solemnly agrees, having just inhaled a rose-scented ferny and claimed it might be proof of divine grace. It's the 1580s. You've landed smack in the middle of Akbar's interfaith experiment. Jesuits from Goa have been invited to the Mughal court for philosophical exchanges, theological debates, and, inadvertently, dessert tastings. You drift around the room as the priests marvel at the opulence. One stares in disbelief at a candied model of a Quran verse rendered in delicate calligraphy. Another tries to sketch a tray of sugared almonds shaped like lotus buds. He gives up. They sparkle. He murmurs, "No quill can capture that." One priest, wide-eyed, reports in a letter home that the Mughal emperor dines nightly with 50 dishes, many of which are sweeter than the virgin's breath. You blink. That's one way to describe gulab jamun. They're not just stunned by the flavors. They're disoriented by how sugar flows so freely here. At every meal, in every ritual, across religions and castes. Even the poorest here eat sweets on feast days. One writes, and not in modest quantities. You step into a side room where one Jesuit debates a Sufi scholar over the symbolic meaning of sweetness. In Christendom, the Jesuit begins, "We reserve sugar for celebration." The Sufi laughs gently. Then here, "You will never mourn." They sip from spiced sherbet and continue talking as if theology has a flavor. Historians still argue whether the Jesuits truly respected Mughal culture or simply tolerated it while secretly judging everything behind silk fans. But their writings reveal genuine awe, and not just for the grandeur of the court, but the culinary sophistication, especially the sweets. One priest writes about watching a wedding procession where the bride rode in a litter shaped like a sugar swan. He notes, perhaps jealously, that European weddings rarely involve edible vehicles. You follow a group of them into the imperial kitchen for a tour. A cook offers them a sugar sculpture shaped like the Virgin Mary, painstakingly crafted by a Hindu assistant. The silence is complicated. Later, they're treated to a dish made of milk, saffron, rosewater, and finely crushed sugar-coated pistachios. "I weep," one mutters. This is grace. They try, bless them, to bring some of these recipes back to Europe. But saffron is expensive, ghee is unfamiliar, and jaggery baffles them. "Burnt sugar," one says dismissively. He'll regret that later when he realizes nothing in Europe has that depth of flavor. Back in the court, the Jesuits present the emperor with gifts, paintings, clocks, and a box of European sweets. The Mughals accept them politely. But it's clear, they're underwhelmed. The candies are dense, chalky, unspiced. Akbar tastes one, raises an eyebrow, and returns to his saffron kulfi. You overhear a nobleman joke. The foreigners eat sugar like medicine. No joy, no sin, just obligation. You try the European candy. He's not wrong. Yet the Jesuits are persistent. One commissions an illustrated recipe book. Another begs a kitchen assistant to show him how to make sheer kurma. Writing in his diary, "Milk of angels, tangles of sweetness, I fear I may forget the Psalms." You visit their chambers later and find them experimenting. One stirs a pot with too much clove. The other burns a tray of almond sweets. A third has become obsessed with rose essence, dabbing it behind his ears like perfume. "The scent of paradise," he explains. Or at least, a Mughal kitchen. But they're not just interested in taste. They begin to understand the language of sugar here. How sweets are offered at births, weddings, festivals. How gifting sugar is shorthand for goodwill, forgiveness, even flirtation. One writes home, "Here, sweetness is not indulgence, it is communication." Outside the palace, they join a procession for Eid. Watching trays of sweets pass down crowded streets. Children chase carts of Sebian and Shakarpara. The priests are handed samples. And after a moment's hesitation, they eat. Their eyes go wide. One makes the sign of the cross. You're not sure if it's ingratitude or survival. And maybe, just maybe, they begin to realize that they're witnessing something deeper than culinary excess. This is an entire civilization shaped by sugar. From its fields to its faiths, from Sufi shrines to royal feasts. Night falls, and the priests sit under a jasmine tree, writing by candlelight. Today, one pens, "I learned that sweetness can be holy, and that perhaps God, too, has a sweet tooth." You smile in the dark, fingers dusted with sugar. The candles have burned lower, and the laughter in the courtyards grows quieter. You wander alone now, past closed kitchen doors, dim shrines, and emptied banquet halls. The air feels heavier, like something has shifted, not just in the season, but in the spirit of the place. This is the empire's late sugar hour, still sweet, but curdling at the edges. You're back in Delhi, decades after Shah Jahan's reign, and the Mughal Empire isn't quite what it was. The palaces are still standing, the sugar still flows, but the laughter feels thinner. Courtiers murmur more than they sing. Dishes come slower, sweets arrive colder. You pass through a once bustling kitchen, now staffed by half its former team. A head cook stirs a pot of zarda, sweet rice with raisins and almonds, but there's less saffron, fewer nuts, and no gold leaf. Budget cuts, he says with a shrug. Still tastes good, though. The empire is fraying. And sugar? Sugar is still here, but it's now also a shadow. You watch a nobleman at dinner nibble a barfi with disinterest. Too sweet, he mutters. Or maybe I've changed. You're not sure which is more tragic. Out in the city, sugar is no longer a luxury. It's a tool, a crutch, sometimes a mask. Vendors hawk syrupy treats on corners. But fewer people buy. Fields still grow cane, but taxes bite harder than beetles. Some farmers turn to other crops. Some leave. A letter from a provincial governor complains of spoilage. Too much sugar in storage. Not enough silver to trade. Another blames the British. They want our ports. Let them have the molasses. See if it buys them poetry. Historians still argue about when exactly the Mughal Empire began to decay. Was it Aurangzeb's austerity, the weight of internal conflict, or the creeping claws of European companies? But in the kitchens, the decline tastes unmistakable. You sit with a former royal chef, now working in a merchant's household. He still makes halwa, still uses the old recipes, but his eyes stay on the fire. The new masters don't care about balance. He says, just sweetness, just flash. He hands you a piece. It's sugary and hollow. Elsewhere, in a noblewoman's chamber, the conversation turns bitter. My father says the British sweets are like chalk. She says, tearing into a silver-wrapped laddu. They don't understand that sugar isn't just sweet, it's layered. It's memory. It's voice. Her servant nods, and it makes better wedding gifts. Outside, street musicians sing an old song about sugar fields and lost loves. But the harmony is off. The flute is cracked. The rhythm stumbles. You visit a crumbling garden where once the emperors drank rose sherbet and listened to nightingales. Now, weeds creep up marble steps. The pool is dry. A boy sells chicky, peanut brittle, to passing guards. You buy a piece. It crunches too loudly in the silence. In the outskirts, the sugarcane presses still turn. But slowly, workers murmur about late pay. Broken tools. One says, the mills used to sing. Now they creak. In a hushed town near the coast, you see something new. Englishmen inspecting a sugar shipment. Ledger books in hand. They speak through interpreters. They frown at moisture content. They measure profits. You watch one drop a cube of misri into his tea and grimace. Too exotic, he says. You sigh. The sugar is still here. But the language has changed. It's no longer whispered in poetry or shaped into birds. It's weighed, sold, taxed, exported. The Mughals had infused sugar with art, religion, even magic. The newcomers infuse it with efficiency. You slip into a village home where a grandmother prepares pinny, round sweets with ghee, jaggery, and wheat. She sings to herself, her hands quick and sure. Her granddaughter watches, fascinated. Will she pass the recipe down? You ask. The old woman smiles, only if she eats it slowly. You smile back, maybe not all sweetness fades. As night deepens, you return to the palace one last time. It's quieter than ever. A single torch flickers near the main gate. Inside, a forgotten fountain still trickles, echoing in empty halls. You sit beside it, nibbling a sugar candy shaped like a rose. It's slightly stale, but when you close your eyes, you still taste the legacy. Because even in decline, the Mughal sugar world lingers, ghost-like, fragrant, bittersweet. It hides in market stalls, family recipes, dusty ledgers, and the scent of jaggery smoke on winter mornings. And you, lucky guest of history, have seen both its bloom and its crumble. You lean back against the stone, the candy melting slowly on your tongue, and the sugar still sings. Morning breaks soft and gold over the subcontinent, and the air is alive with the quiet clatter of cooking pots, the swoosh of brooms on stone, and the sizzle of ghee meeting hot pans. You're not in a palace now. You're not even in a court. You're in modern India. No crown jewels. No emperors. Just bicycles. Honking rickshaws. WhatsApp pings. And an obsession with sweets that hasn't dulled one grain since the Mughal days. You sit outside a corner shop in Lucknow, watching the city wake up. A chai wala boils milk, tea, and sugar into a stormy swirl, the scent curling around your face like a hug from a sugar-drenched ghost. Across the street, trays of jalebis are being lowered into oil with the same reverence you once saw in imperial kitchens. The vendor, bald, barefoot, and smiling, flips each golden spiral like he's been doing it since Akbar's time. He probably has, if not in body, then certainly in blood. Everywhere you look, sweets are the punctuation marks of life. A couple steps out of a marriage registrar's office and heads straight to a mithai shop. He gets motichur lattice. She insists on kaju katli. They feed each other awkwardly, laugh, and hop onto a scooter, horn blaring, sugar fingers waving. A woman in a sari gently places a box of sweets in front of a small shrine in her home. Ganesh smiles back beneath a marigold garland. The sweets are blessed before anyone dares to eat them. At a school gate, a boy waves a report card and is handed a rasgulla in celebration. It's not even noon, and he's already sticky with success. You wander into a sweet shop that could double as a museum. Rows and rows of gleaming metal trays hold every imaginable form of sugar, syrup-soaked, milk-folded, nut-packed, foil-covered. You spot Son Papdi, still resisting physics, Peta nestled like sleeping moons, and Amarti, proudly coiled like sugary armor. The shopkeeper offers you a piece of cham-cham. You hesitate. He smiles knowingly, Mughal style. He says, you bite in. It's floral, spongy, sweet to the point of delirium. Somewhere, Shah Jahan's molars throb sympathetically. And yet, despite the centuries, something about the ritual remains unchanged. Historians still debate whether modern Indian sweets are a direct continuation of Mughal traditions or a hybrid evolved through colonialism, industry, and globalization. But the taste says, lineage. The sugarcane still grows, the syrup still boils, the art still whispers. You board a train headed toward Kolkata. Vendors come by hawking sandesh and mishti doi, shouting over the din of wheels. An old man beside you breaks a piece of shakarpara in half and offers it without a word. You accept, as is custom. At a wedding in Jaipur, you find sugar sculptures again, only now they light up with LEDs and spin slowly under disco balls. The bride holds a phone in one hand and a burfi in the other. A cousin records a reel with a gulab jamun filter. Everything's new, yet everything's old. In Mumbai, towering sweet chains boast climate-controlled mithai displays and fusion flavors, lavender peta, wasabi barfi, dark chocolate rasmalai. You try one. It's weirdly good. And on Diwali night, you watch as families exchange boxes wrapped in gold ribbon, sweets as gifts, blessings, symbols, currency, exactly as it was 500 years ago. The boxes might be branded now, but the sugar still means love. You meet a young girl helping her grandmother stir gajar halwa on a small stove. She grins, showing off a missing tooth. It's our family recipe, she says proudly, but Nana says it came from a queen's kitchen. You ask which queen. She shrugs. A really sweet one. You believe her. Even in the digital age, recipes are passed like heirlooms, measured in hands, not grams. A pinch of this, a memory of that. Sugar threads through generations like a golden needle. In Chennai, a rickshaw driver tells you how his father used to carry panikaram, jaggery water, to school during summer. No fridge then, but sweet kept you cool. He sips a modern bottled drink. Still does. You find a dusty roadside stall where rock candy garlands are strung like necklaces, ready for temple offerings. A boy buys one and eats it on the spot. His mother scolds him. You smile. The sugar wins again. And everywhere, sugar is resistance, to bitterness, to time, to forgetting. It says, we remember who we are. You walk through Delhi's Chandni Chowk, where Mughal shadows still linger. Sweet shops blink with LED signs now, but inside, the rituals hold. A tray of kirchan, scraped milk fudge, reminds you of a night centuries ago. In a marble palace, with rose-scented lamps and soft poetry in the air. As you pass the Red Fort, you buy a piece of jaggery candy from a cycle vendor. It tastes earthy, deep, caramelized, a memory you never lived. And just before you leave, you see a child dipping his finger in sugar syrup and drawing on a dusty window. He writes something that disappears as fast as it formed. But for a moment, just a moment, you taste the empire. And now, dear traveler, your journey through the sugared pages of history comes to a gentle close. Let the images drift like mist across your memory. Golden kitchens hissing with steam. Sherbet that sparkled under moonlight. Hands dusted with powdered sugar and prayers. Fields of cane swaying in wind heavy with song. You've wandered past emperors in love with candy. Saints who healed with syrup. And whispering chefs who folded poetry into batter. You've seen how sweetness endured, through power and pain, through rise and ruin, and how a single grain of sugar could carry both joy and memory. So let the scent of saffron and cardamom linger on your breath a little longer. Let the warmth of halwa and hospitality wrap around your chest like a shawl. Let your heartbeat settle to the rhythm of syrup dripping slowly into a silver bowl. You're safe now. The kitchens have quieted. The spoons are set down. The last lamp flickers out. Breathe deeply. You've tasted history. And it was sweet.